Like Marcus said, I'm Vice President of Marketing at Allego. My background is in product marketing, so this topic around sales content is near and dear to my heart. I think we have some product marketers here today, hopefully, that will also be chiming in about your challenges, your expectations, what you're looking to get out of this webinar today. So if you're looking for a particular answer to a question, something's on your mind that you want an answer to, don't be shy. Drop those into the chat. I regularly monitor the chat as I'm presenting. I want to make this time investment valuable to you, right? You've carved out an hour out of your day. I want to make sure that you walk away from today learning something new, getting a new perspective, and there's some value in us sharing our perspectives along the way as well. So don't be shy about being active in the chat and asking your questions. So let's get started. Today's presentation is really going to be about how do we create structured, searchable content that's aligned to buyer journeys that's going to really help you, drive better findability, usability, and adoption with your frontline sales teams. Really, how are we gonna fix that last mile of activation of that content? It's great if reps can find it, but the whole point of content is to communicate a message to your audience and make an impact on the buyer journey, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how do we effectively activate that content within sales situations, and cover the topic of digital rooms, right, as a way to activate that content, including how that can drive better engagement, shorter sales cycles, and just better alignment along the buyer journey, right? And spoiler alert, you don't really need more content. You just need to leverage the content that you have and just make it easier to find, right? So we're going to start with that. But before we go in, I just want to understand better sort of the audience here today. What really prompted you to register? Why are you attending this webinar today? Is it about really improving how you organize your content today? Is it about really trying to activate that content? Are you interested about learning what a digital sales room is? And again, if it's something else, just drop it in the chat. Just always curious to understand the audience a little bit better so I can tailor the presentation and just make it more impactful for everyone here live with us today. So you should see a pop-up on your screen. Take a moment, pick one of those answers, and I'll give a quick overview of sort of what I'm seeing, and I'll try to tailor the presentation as appropriate.
Yeah, as Dennis said, if you got multiple screens, it's going to be on one of them. Go ahead and fill that out for me. We've got about 54% participation, but want to see those higher numbers. And let's get this chat rolling. I mean, do you think that it's tougher to get sales content adoption or to prove the ROI of sales content? Add your thoughts into the chat if you've already filled out that poll question for me. So, Dennis, what do you think? Is it
I
tougher to
think
get sales content adoption or to prove the ROI of sales content?
I think ROI is harder, right? I mean, because sellers are inundated across the organization, right? Things to learn, things to show, things to do, and sales content just becomes such a difficult thing to associate with the success of an opportunity. It's typically about the rep had the right skills, or the rep did the right actions in the sales cycle, they reached the right person. Content always becomes an afterthought, right? And it's hard to say with certainty that a content specifically drove a deal or helped influence a deal. That's a really hard thing to correlate. So I'm going to say it's harder to prove content ROI. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, you're going to get some tips on how to drive better adoption. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I don't think that's as hard as some might think it is.
Perfect. And we got about 81% participation. So great job, guys.
That's great. That's
I'm going
great.
to just call these out, Dennis, for the folks that are on the
Yeah,
on demand, if you don't mind.
please do.
So we got about 44% that said they're looking to improve how we organize content. About 22% of you said they're here to learn how to better activate content, and 22% also said we want to figure out what a digital sales room is. All right. So anything in the chat, just go ahead and add that in, and we're going to get the ball rolling here.
Excellent. So for those of you that answered, I'm looking to better organize content. That's the topic we're starting with. So really, in my opinion, content is really marketing's most strategic asset, right? But the challenges we experience with content are sort of universal, right? There's no clear structure or taxonomy for how to organize the content. Measurement is hard, like we just talked about a moment ago. How do we prove the ROI of that content? It's typically scattered across multiple tools, and it's hard to sort of unify and find a central place to host that content. And as a result, what happens? Reps can't find anything and activation becomes inconsistent too, right? And trust me, we've all been there. I've been there myself as a product marketer. You produce the perfect deck, the one pager, and weeks later you get that Slack or you get that Teams message. Where's that content, right? Asking for the same thing again and again. And I don't really think this is a content quality problem, right? So there's no doubt in my mind that we're producing really high value quality content. It's really a content access and activation problem, right? And I think today's mandate isn't just to create content, it's to ensure that it's really discoverable, useful, and actually used, right? And AI is making this problem even harder. So sort of the barrier to creating content has been lowered with AI and LLMs out there, right? It's almost like compounded the issue. There's more content out there than ever was before. And but again, if that content is scattered, it's untagged, I can't really find it, it's just noise for your sales team, right? So in my opinion, challenge really isn't making more, it's sort of unlocking the value of what you already have. And sort of question is, okay, how do we do that, right? I think about sort of three core challenges that really are pervasive across really any client that I've worked with, any marketing organization that I've been a part of. Sort of the problems really stem from these three challenges, right? And I call them sort of three categories of cognitive load for your sellers, right? So if there's too much effort on behalf of a rep to either find it, process it, or share it, they're probably going to revert to their old behaviors, right? They're trying to take the path to least resistance. They're busy, they're in back-to-back meetings. They're trying to drive pipeline, heat their quota. So any excuse to revert to an old behavior, they're probably going to do it. So what we want to do is really minimize these three types of cognitive load and these three challenges. So the first one is where's the content, right? Fancy term for this is extraneous load. It's basically the complexity caused by poor organization, right? And we're going to talk about how taxonomy helps with that. Second one is what is this content about? Okay, I opened it, I found it, but is it really what I was expecting? So this is a fancy term for this is intrinsic load, right? So it's the complexity of the content itself. How hard is it to understand what this actually communicates? Does it really match what I'm looking for, right? And the third one is how do I really share and communicate this content to the buyer, right? This is sort of like germane load. So I've got this content. How do I really recall the information in there, communicate it with my buyer in a structured, clear, and understandable manner, right? So these are the three kind of core challenges that I think hinder marketing content adoption, success. So we're going to cover each in turn and give you some ideas for how to tackle them. And in my opinion, sort of use a metaphor here, right? Your content really needs to be almost as easy to use as a Netflix or Amazon kind of like shopping experience, right? It needs to be predictive, relevant, easy to understand. And that's hopefully the future that we're trying to build here together. So the first question is, okay, where's the content? How do I find it, right? And the core to this is really a sales content taxonomy, right? A well-structured taxonomy aligns your content to buckets and sales stages. And I want to stress sales stages because that's really how sellers think, right? I'm in the prospecting stage. I need a certain set of content. I'm in the negotiation phase towards the end. I need a certain set of content, right? So the more we can think like reps and align it to how they work and where they work, like in the CRM, the more adoption you're going to get for your content. It's going to be easier to find as well, right? So a solid taxonomy really aligns your content to how reps sell, not really how marketing and content is organized. Like you don't want to have a bucket that just says decks or one pagers, right? I mean, that's good. It's one way to do it, but it's not the most effective way to do it. And it's not just about naming files correctly and making it easy to find that way as well. It's about enabling the right way to search that content, the right way to filter that content. So one idea that we'll cover later is making it based on your sales plays, right? How is your sales team currently going to market? And organizing the content with those sales plays in mind. That's going to be more relevant to sort of how sellers want to find that content, right? But again, in terms of building that core taxonomy, there are typically 8 categories that we at Allego use to kind of arm our clients with how to organize content, and they're really designed to be mutually exclusive but collectively exhaustive, right? So your teams don't really get stuck in overlapping tags or content chaos. And it really gives both marketing and enablement teams and sales teams a shared language to categorize, deliver, and analyze your content, right? And most importantly, this really makes your content usable by sales, which is the ultimate goal, right? So every piece of content should map to at least one of these categories, right? It doesn't have to be exclusively in one category. Some will be in more than one category. But if you have a content management system, you can also ensure that you're not duplicating that content by tagging it in different categories as well, right? So number one is sales process. I think that's sort of the most intuitive way for reps and frontline sellers to access content because it aligns to sort of their opportunity life cycle and the customer buyer journey, right? Second one is training and onboarding resources. How can I align sort of the core skill sets and the resources to help people ramp up into their core selling skills? Third one is resources that are available to help you sell better, whether that's call scripts, templates, talk tracks, objection handling, those types of resources. Next one is competitive intelligence. How can I get better intelligence about how to position my product, my differentiators against the competition? Then there's going to be a whole set of documentation and resources on what does our product actually do? What are the multiple products that we already have in our catalog, right? And how can we sort of organize the various content pieces around that? There's going to be some external insights that you want to always bring to your team, right? What are the industry analysts saying? What are some of the market trends that are relevant to my sellers that they should know about, right? Whether that's market research, industry trends, buyer intelligence, you want to sort of house that in a bucket. If you're a highly compliant organization, like you're in financial services, if you're in life sciences or medical devices, you're probably going to have a compliance and legal section where you have, approved messaging, disclosures, how do you manage risk, how do you answer questions around those types of things. And then the final bucket is going to be something around like internal communication news from your HR, maybe policies, maybe executive announcements, et cetera, that are important to your business, right? This isn't sort of a one size fits all taxonomy structure, but it's an example that you can work off of and sort of modify to fit your needs, right? And general rule of thumb is you don't want more than 7 plus or minus 2 categories at the very high level, right? Because that makes it incredibly difficult for people to sort of have a browsing experience. Again, think of it of the Netflix analogy, right? You've got different movie genres. You might want to search by a genre, but that's not always the way that you're going to want to search, right? So this is one way to access content, but it's not the only way, right? And you can adapt this and mold it sort of your needs, right? Um, we're going to be giving away a free resource for you, sort of a homework for everybody, and an exercise that really think is going to help you organize your content better. It's a one-page cheat sheet, again, aligned by the stages of the buyer journey. You might have different labels for them, but generally it's, awareness, consideration, decision, something of that nature, right? So think of 3 columns at the top, and then the 2 rows are going to be what's external, what's internal, right? This is really going to help you almost do some ruthless prioritization, right? So what actually needs to be in front of sellers and reps? Uh, Really going through this exercise with your marketing team, with your enablement team, with your training team is really going to help you almost like eliminate some of the clutter, right? So if I really had to force fit all the key content on one page, what would that be, right? And I've found that this type of resource really works wonders for onboarding, especially for new folks coming onto your team. They don't know anything. They don't even know where the bathroom is, right? But giving them this when they onboard, they really truly understand, okay, these are the key pieces of content I need to be successful in my role. They really appreciate it. And in any role that I've been in, just creating this one cheat sheet and just even if it's as simple as I'm just going to link to the pieces of content that are in Google Drive or in my SharePoint or something basic like that, that's going to go a long way to sort of build confidence and really helping your sellers save time in finding stuff, right? I've often found people like bookmark this. It's something they come back to over and over again. So I can't stress enough how much of a quick hack this is to help organize your content. Again, if you don't really have like a fancy content management system yet, you're not quite there yet, this type of thing is really helpful. But even if you have one, right? This is a great way to prioritize and say, okay, what are really the key pieces of content I should be getting in front of my reps and how do I eliminate the clutter, right? What didn't make the list? What couldn't I fit in this one-page cheat sheet? So be on the lookout for that in the digital room after the session ends. And another cheat code for everybody on the webinar today. So I'm sure you're good friends with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever your LLM of choice is. I love the prompt framework. This is something that I came up with, but I'm really sharing with anybody that I speak with. It's a great sort of approach to creating a prompt with sort of the right guardrails and sort of context to give you a good answer, right? So it's like, what's the purpose? What role should the LLM play? What output do you want it to generate? What materials or context should it use? What are the parameters or sort of the guardrails you want to put on it? And what kind of thinking do you want the LLM to put in motion, right? So using that prompt framework, you can get started on kind of ideating on what an ideal taxonomy looks like for you, right? So I put it in here. You can copy and paste this after the session ends and just kind of iterate with it. with your LLM of choice, but you'll see here kind of like some of the precursor kind of text that I put in for you, but obviously you have to fill it in with your own context, your own content, your own business, and what space are you in, all that sort of stuff. But it will help you create at least the high level buckets, right? That's almost like the biggest challenge in creating a taxonomy is what are the kind of mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive categories at the highest level of my taxonomy that's going to make the content organization simple, easy, and it's going to drive better adoption, right? So hoping that this is a value. We will share this with you after the session ends, and love to hear feedback. And happy to continue the conversation if any of you would like to chat about how do I organize content to make sure that it's findable, right? Um, Okay, so now let's assume we've organized the content, right? But that's step one, right? It's the foundation, but it doesn't really solve all your challenges, right? You've got your structure in place, you've got your folders, your categories, your subfolders, but chances are sellers are still going to say, I can't find it. I can guarantee you, right? Because why? Folders don't really equal findability, right? Folders store content, but they don't really surface it. And most sellers don't have time to click through. Let's be honest, they're not going to have time to browse through 9 different categories of content and nested folders under each just to find their deck, right? So if you don't have a formal content system, you can start by using, again, consistent file naming conventions. Again, seriously, this is like low tech, but it's high impact. Include the product, the audience, the deal stage, right in the file name, right? Small things like this can help. But again, once you're ready to scale, tagging really is the unlock, right? With AI now powering a lot of these content systems, it really powers the search, the filters, even the AI-driven recommendations that can be made inside the CRM and in the flow of work for reps. So that's really how content is getting discovered today, right? It's not just getting stored. We're not asking reps to go searching and go on a wild goose chase to find content. The content finds them based on where they are in their buyer journey, right? So that's really the future that we're moving towards with AI and content. And this is more of a kind of a laugh or a chuckle break, right? Let's take a moment to honor the universal file naming journey. I found this on LinkedIn the other day, and I had to take a screenshot of it. But this is sort of like what happens when there's no system, no naming convention, and all those like quick rounds of edits that marketers have to go through, right? And again, the point isn't really just to make you laugh here. I hope that you find it humorous, but if people can't tell what a file is or when to use it, they're just not, right? So that's why even something as simple as file naming conventions and standards matter, even if you have or don't have a content management system, right? But the good news is, we don't have to do this manually anymore and get frustrated and call something final, 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 right? We've entered an era where AI can really do the heavy lifting here, right? So you don't have to let manual tagging slow you down. You can really use AI to generate consistent descriptions, tags, right? Metadata. It really saves a ton of time, and it's literally just a click of a button, which helps improve discoverability. Because chances are the number one feature that your reps are going to use, even if they're in Google Drive or a CMS, they're going to go to the search bar, right? I mean, that's the motion that we're all used to, whether we're going to ChatGPT, we're going to Google, we go to the search bar, right? But having a good tagging and sort of description and naming taxonomy for the individual files is going to help you surface the right content where it matters. And this is just an example of sort of what Allego can do at the click of a button to help you tag some of those content items, right? And make it more discoverable. So second challenge we'll move on to. Now that we talked about a little bit about the foundations and the organization and the taxonomy, which again, it's one challenge, but it's not going to solve all the challenges. It's like, what's this content about, right? How can once I find it, is it actually what I need, right? And how can I use that to my advantage in a sales opportunity, right? So we really have to start meeting sellers where they are, right? So chances are reps are going to approach content in a couple different ways, right? Some are going to search, right? They're looking for something specific. They're going to go to the search bar. Some are going to want to browse, right? We talked a little bit about this. Some might go to the taxonomy and go to the folders and try to find what they want that way. And some want to be guided, right? So guided selling. I'm in a specific sales scenario. Tell me what to do if I'm in the sales scenario, right? And make it easy that way. So there's no one answer, but we want to create all the paths. So depending on how the rep or the audience wants to find it, there's a path for them to get to the end result, right? So think of this like UX designers. We want to optimize for usability. not just for hierarchy, right? And this is really how we're going to get to driving more adoption and more usability of our content in the field. Again, good news here is that AI can now find answers from content. Chances are reps are already kind of doing this. I'm sure most of you on this audience have done it also. You drop a PDF into ChatGPT, you ask it questions, right? You don't have time to read it, right? And that's sort of the future that we're moving to, right? Reps just don't have time to read the content and absorb it. They're going to start dropping that into LLMs and querying it and trying to say, okay, does this get me what I need? Is it really, the content that I was looking for? And content management systems can now do this right in the search bar. You can ask a question, what's our latest competitive intel on competitor one, right? And instantly get an answer with sources. And this is really where AI gets really powerful. It's sort of retrieval, right, of the answer from the content itself with the sources and the citations if you want actually to grab that content, right? So it's no longer just about search, it's about surfacing knowledge really instantly in that flow of work. So that's sort of like where search is moving to, and how that's sort of one path to content discoverability. The second one is like I said, guided, right? A sales playbook channel is really designed to help sellers easily navigate and access the most relevant resources for a specific selling scenario, right? And this is one of the best content formats that we've used at Allego, even at our own organization, and one of the ones that we always ensure that we're arming our clients with, right? It aligns perfectly really what sellers need. It's sort of like what to know, what do I need to show, and what do I need to say, right? In a sales situation. And it's dead simple to build, and reps actually use it. Again, if you don't have a CMS, you can still use this framework to organize your content to make progress towards better findability and usage, right? So now the question becomes, okay, what kind of sales plays do I have? How many of us have actually mapped out all of our sales plays and put it in one place for reps, right? Chances are some of our seasoned reps maybe know what to do, but is that really documented? Is it somewhere easy to find? This is one of the things that we universally try to solve for our clients. It's sort of like a sales play audit, first of all, right? So here's an example of a sales play library, which I really advise everyone on this call to do. So once you've built your sales playbook channel or hub, this is really where things get real, right? You can now map content directly to these specific sales plays like these, right? And this is just an example, but it shows the power of sort of clarity, right? So let's take an example. When sales is running a grow or right size play, right? I'm trying to grow an account, or maybe they're using my product too much. I got to right size their contract. They should have the content tailored to that sales motion, right? It might be a case study. It might be a one pager. It might be a value calculator, whatever reinforces that sales move, right? So marketing's job here isn't just to make content, it's to make content almost like play aware. That's the term that I like to use. It's play aware content, right? That's how you shift from just general kind of content management enablement to truly like strategic activation mapped to how your sellers actually sell, right? And again, you don't need dozens of plays. This is just an example of sort of like generic sales plays that might be in a particular organization, but your responsibility is understand those plays, align with your sales teams, and start documenting the content that actually supports some of the sales plays that are out there. And I guarantee you're going to get more adoption of some of your content. And chances are you already have content that would work really well for a sales play. You just haven't organized it that way, right? You've organized it by a different way. And that's why sellers can't find it, can't use it, and your sort of sales content adoption suffers, right? So I can't stress enough, build sales playbook library, build sort of a structure for how you want to organize your content within a sales play, and use that as another sort of sorting mechanism for how you organize your content for your field sellers, okay? So now we've tackled the first two challenges, right? So it's like, can't find the content. Where is the content? Okay, I found it. Like, is it really the one that I'm looking for? How do I actually utilize this content? Now we're going to move towards how do I share the right content, right? And how do I recall the information and knowledge in that content and share it in a way that's useful and impactful in the buyer journey, right? We talked about this, right? The whole point of content is to communicate a message, right? Whether it's video, whether it's a one pager, there's messaging on that. And you want that messaging to be read by your buyer and to sort of inform them or differentiate you, right? So the way in which you package the content and the way in which you share that content and you measure it matters, right? I'll give you one anecdote for actually first step, sharing content internally. And then we'll also talk about using digital rooms in a way to share that content externally with your buyers. We've done research with one of our partners, Corporate Visions. Again, shout out to them, where we've worked with them to sort of like understand, what drives sales content adoption. And we found in research with them that reps are 2 times more likely, again, 2 times more likely to adopt content when it's explained by a peer or launched by a peer versus the marketing professional. Okay. Uh, so why is that, right? Reps trust other reps, right? They want to do what the top performer is doing. That's hitting quota, right? So the way in which we introduce content internally also matters, not just how we organize it, right? So imagine this is almost like a case study for your content, right? No one wants to be the guinea pig in using that new deck that you created or that new one pager, right? But if someone walks up and says, "Hey, I work with marketing. I tried this content with my opportunity. It really helped me advance it," or like the prospect viewed it and downloaded it and shared it. That's a success story, and people are going to gravitate to that, especially if that's delivered by a rep. So again, you won't do this for all your content, but if you've got a key messaging launch, you've got your new maybe sales presentation that you really want to drive adoption, maybe you've got a core message you want adopted, think of that strategy in terms of creating a case study and proof and validation that the content you've created has actually been battle tested, it's been used, and it's generating impact, right? So that's sort of like step one is like how do you release that content internally, build more credibility around it. Now let's talk a little bit about how do I share that content externally, right? And what is a digital sales room? I know that sort of a segment of this audience today wanted to learn a little bit more about digital sales rooms, but think of it like a personalized content microsite or a web page, right? It's built for a single deal, typically, or a stakeholder or a sales scenario. And it's a new format for how we can activate content. Again, marketers control the packaging, the story, and sellers control the experience and can modify sort of some of the messaging in it. But that's really where the magic is. It really helps with seller marketer alignment and being able to communicate a consistent story to your buyer, right? It's really a new category of technology that helps you differentiate the content sharing experience, right? So it's not just about, attaching that content to an email and shooting it over, but now I've almost created a bespoke web page experience that's personalized for my buyer. So again, packaging matters, right? Think about your iPhone or your phone or something major that you bought, right? The packaging really does make an impact and makes you stand out. Content is no different in B2B selling or selling generally, right? And this has been validated by again, Gartner and various organizations talking about how really the future of selling and B2B selling and interaction really is moving towards digital rooms. 30% of the B2B sales cycle will be primarily run through a digital room by 2028. By 2027, 40% of digital rooms will include digital assistants using Gen AI to answer buyer questions. So what are we doing now by packaging that content in almost a library or a personal page? Now buyers can go and use AI to query that room and all the content in it because guess what? Buyers are busy too, right? They're not going to have time to read through all these various decks and one pagers and they probably forgot, right? They're probably trying to buy your solution or evaluate you in between meetings and other priorities. So this is how we actually make it easier for buyers to consume content and adopt content as well. And if buyers are consuming and adopting content, guess who's going to do it as well? Sellers, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. How can I engage my customer? How can I get them on the hook and get them engaged with my message? So that's really where we're moving towards. Um, Again, we know this aligns with sort of the universal trends in B2B buying and selling, right? Buyers prefer self-serve experiences. You've heard this a million times. 65% initiate the buying via self-guided research. Buying teams are larger, so it's not like I'm communicating with one buyer. I got to communicate that message and content to 10 people, right? And they're probably jumping in at different stages of the buyer journey, right? Some are coming in late, some are coming in at the last minute. You got to catch them up. So this digital room really does serve as almost like your source of truth for what's been communicated, the demos or the presentations that you've given, and all the different content all in one place. And again, good news here is also tracking and visibility into engagement. If you attach a piece of content to an email, who knows what they viewed, right? Or if they even downloaded it and viewed it. But once you control it on a web page like experience, like most of us marketers already know, you can go and track the backend and analytics and say they looked at page one, they looked at page two, or they just popped into the content. You get alerts. So that this digital experience in sharing content is really, really quite valuable, right? And again, to use an analogy, because I love analogies, imagine you're fishing, right? One person has a single rod in the water, while the other has 100 lines cast at once. Who do you think is more likely to catch a fish, right? Uh, Obviously, the one with the more rods, right? So this is the difference between traditional selling, where you're like one-to-one, you're attaching an email, attaching content to an email, you're trying to really drive engagement that way, versus using digital rooms. And instead of relying on these scattered emails or one-off meetings, the digital rooms really let you engage multiple stakeholders at once, right? So that's the secret. Even if you don't know who they are, right? They can pop into the room, you get an alert. Guess what? Now your sellers have actually expanded the buying committee, and that content has been viewed by multiple people in the organization, not just the person you emailed, right? So there's a lot of value here. Um,
I get one quick question from the audience here.
yeah, yeah, let's go. Excellent.
Talking through these digital rooms, how do you balance personalization for buyers when they need to scale across larger teams, like 50 plus sellers? Is the question there?
That's a great question, and one that we can solve through templates. So these digital rooms are typically controlled by marketing, right? Where the branding, the organization of the content is almost like 80% ready, right? And then the sellers take that final 20% to really make it tailored to their opportunity, right? So the goal is, again, like I said before, sales and marketing alignment. Marketing's never going to be able to fully personalize a content piece or an experience for an individual account, but we can do it by industry, we could do it by buyer type, we could do it by solution category. You have to kind of think about how you want to do that based on your industry and your objectives. But then the seller can grab that template. Again, it's 80% there. It's got most of the relevant content in there. And then they just take that final 20%, right? Maybe they upload a personal greeting and a recording, right? Or maybe they add some context about the account into that room and make it more tailored to that opportunity, right? So it's really a balancing act is the answer to that. Marketing creates the templates. Think about how you want to create those templates by industry, by product category, by sales motion, by sales play. There's no one right way to do it. And then ask your reps to control that final 20%, right, of the personalization. It's really a collaborative effort.
Another quick question for you. I think someone wanted to just know what's the metrics that matter most to you right now? Is it engagement, velocity, win rates, or how do you tie that to seller productivity is what they asked here.
Yeah, that's another great question, right? So again, that sort of depends on what you're trying to measure. If it's sort of like internal versus external, so that would be I would have two different KPIs for that in terms of, internal engagement. You want to see obviously people accessing the content regularly and using it as part of opportunities. So I would see like content to opportunity association. And again, you can track some of these if you've got a content system integrated with your CRM. Like for active opportunities out there, what content is currently being used in those opportunities. So that's like a correlation that that content is adding value, it's getting access, it's getting used. And I would say for external, you want to see buyer engagement, right? So how many buyers are actually clicking on that content? How many buyers are actually reading that content, right? Is it getting external views and shares and I would say usage and adoption, right? So I would think about your content, you really KPIs from a leading indicator standpoint in terms of obviously access, visibility, but then there's lagging indicators, right? Lagging indicator is okay, I've accessed it, I've viewed it. Did it actually result in a win, right? So you can start to associate sales wins and win rate and lift with content as well. So for reps that use this content versus the ones that didn't, did you see a delta? Did you see a lift in sort of sales win rate? Did you see a lift in opportunity size, right? These are all things that content management systems can do, including Allego, right? Because now we're sort of mapping the Salesforce or your CRM opportunity data to content sharing data, right? So now you can start to build some really compelling cases and again, use that as another case study for driving adoption of your content, right? Say like reps that use this content saw this much more lift in win rate, saw, this much engagement from buyers, and these are all great proof points to sort of drive more adoption of your content. Okay. Great questions. Keep them coming. And again, if you have any questions or comments in the chat, don't be shy about that as well.
Yeah, add it
This
to the chat, add it to the Q&A panel. Chat's been quiet, but Q&A panel has a couple questions in it too
good.
for the end. I'll
All
let you
good.
keep going though.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcus. And thanks, folks, for staying engaged. So you'll see here, again, this is an example of what a digital room might look like. You'll have your personalized branding on it. Marketers can control this. You got specific content items in different sections, right? So again, think of it like a web page that you create for your buyers and for your sales teams, and they can modify it and edit it and make it a little bit more relevant to their sales opportunities and take care of that sort of last 20% of customization, right? And the good news is this content and digital rooms are also accessible right within their flow of work in a CRM, right? So in an opportunity, I'm going to give a demo. I need to be able to add this, brochure, this overview to my digital room and make sure my buyer sees it. Great. The content surfaced right there in the CRM. So low barrier to entry, low barrier to adoption. I click, I add it to my room and it's there, right? And I jump on my demo and the content's already there, right? I don't have to worry about emailing it or following up. So including these in the flow of work also really matters, right? Not just in the system itself, but can we have the content find them, right? That's really the secret sauce that drives adoption as well. Again, just a high level and like how does a digital room really work? Like I said, marketers create that content template, that web page experience. Sellers grab that, right? And then they can enter an email, they can share it with a prospect individually, lock it down, have it be secure. No one else can enter it without sort of like domain level verification. So the good news is these kinds of pages are also highly secure, but you can also sort of unlock them and share them within a particular domain as well, right? So Acme Corporation, I'm selling to them. I don't know everybody at Acme Corporation, but if someone joins, they're going to be allowed in, and I'm going to be actually be able to capture that email, much like marketers do, right? We put a form up, someone joins in, we're capturing and building our list. Sellers want to do that too. They want to multi-thread. They want to expand the buying committee. Digital rooms allow them to do that, but still share that content in a secure way. And the good news is you also get insights. And this is the part sellers really love, right? And what drives up your content adoption as well. Because if sellers see that content is actually resonating with a buyer, they're reading it, they're more likely to use it again, right? When you attach it to an email, you don't see that. You don't understand if they're actually viewing it or not, right? You're sort of guessing. So this next page really shows you the analytics behind these as well, whether it's an individual content item or it's in a collection like a digital room. You can understand who visited, what they viewed, when they viewed it, what pages they viewed. All this type of stuff is captured on the back end, in addition to list building and contact building, because guess what? You're going to have to enter your email to get in, right? And that's a great way to build and expand your buying committee within a sales opportunity. So again, the analytics behind it are really, really quite powerful. Okay. Product marketing in the driver's seat. So just again, some expanded use cases for digital rooms. It's not just for sellers and selling, but marketing can actually utilize it at the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that at a high level. I'll also cover some kind of high level use cases on sales as well. So I'll cover each in turn. So we'll start with how digital rooms support marketing teams, right? So again, a common question I get is, do these replace your website? Answer is no, right? It's designed to be a sort of engagement mechanism deeper in the funnel to keep deals moving forward, right? So it's really about personalizing content specific to specific accounts. Not really, like your website's meant to be one to many, right? You don't really understand who's truly coming to your website and can tailor a page for each person, right? So they go deeper than those. They go deeper than landing pages. So you can really create these without like your web team or your development team. It's really just click a button. As long as you can do a WYSIWYG editor, you can use this. And again, you capture a lot of behavioral data and analytics on the back end too. You don't have to go to Google Analytics or some other analytics systems to see how this is resonating, right? So typical marketing use cases that we leverage it for, our clients leverage it for, our in-person and virtual events are huge. So you'll see after the end of this webinar, we're going to drop you into a digital room and have the recording and the slides and all the associated resources, right? So that's one way to use it. When we sponsor events, we use this as like our digital booth. If someone's not really at our physical booth, we have them pop in and see all the materials about our company in these digital rooms. Product marketers can also use it for interacting with analysts. So if you're trying to build relationships with analysts, it's a great way to kind of share your product announcements, your product developments, your prior briefings and inquiries. So it's another kind of like microsite that you can create for each analyst firm or each analyst that you're engaging and trying to influence. And some marketers also use it for account-based marketing, right? So if you have a big account, a strategic account, you want to do a highly tailored experience for them, you can use digital rooms to create content and engagement patterns for that account as well. and drive traffic to it via email and all your usual channels, right? So those are sort of a summary of some marketing use cases for digital rooms. So now we'll go on to cover what are digital rooms and how do they support salespeople, right? So again, we talked a little bit about this. It's more engaging than email, right? So it's streamlines collaboration in a shared space and delivers a better experience that's personalized and tailored versus a static document. And it really also aids in meetings, whether it's follow-ups or even pre-reading in advance of a meeting. And it's a way to actually maintain presence in absence, right? So if you're not live in front of a buyer, they can still have access to all the information and content you've shared in a space. They're not pressured. They could do it on their own pace. And that really helps you influence an opportunity, even when you're not in the room, right? So reps typically create a digital room as almost like their digital business card. I've seen folks put it in their signature, say, "Hey, learn more about me, my company, and what we have to offer." And it sort of like takes them to that page and has like a landing page experience with all the content they want to communicate. They use it as a way to also do initial prospecting, so you can use a digital room to sort of crack into an account or to get a meeting, right? To almost do a highly tailored experience for them and also for deal progression and closing, which is one of the primary use cases, right? So I've got multiple stakeholders, everyone's in the room. I'm trying to align everybody. I'm trying to catch up everybody. Well, go to this one room. You'll be able to catch up on all the prior meetings, the recordings, and all the materials that we've shared with your business, right? Even contracts can get signed directly inside a digital room as well, right? Sort of like a high level overview of some of the primary use cases for digital rooms for salespeople. Okay. Okay. So one kind of final section here, just a real life case study, one of our clients and how they've been using digital rooms. How did it help with content? How did it help with some of the traditional challenges that we were covering, right? Company called Hillman Group. They're an industry leader in builder solutions. So it's a hardware, home solutions, protection gear, robotic solutions, right? And some of their challenges in the market were that like, they had no visibility into what was being shared, right? One that we've talked about, a couple of times today already. Lacked customer connection. It was really hard to like actually engage some of their prospects and their buyers. And they were, just not able to track content effectiveness. Is it actually getting used? Is it actually making an impact? They really just had like no visibility into it, right? So one of the things they did was they again engaged with Allego, start to build some of these rooms by their different builder solution categories, right? So you'll see here, this page is basically all the templates that they created, right, for the different product lines that they have. So you'll see like wood screws, DuraKey, KeyStart, digital catalogs, right? So they created these product line pages and armed their field reps with it. The reps would grab that, right? They would create a copy. They would add a little bit of their personalization, a little bit of their flair, share it with their buyers. And what they saw was really astounding, right? 74% reduction in content requests. So less people pinging marketing saying, "Hey, where's that brochure? Where's that deck?" Because guess what? It's already organized for you. Just grab it off the shelf and adjust it to your needs based on your sales motion, right? They were selling various products. So they organized their content by these different product catalogs. And they were also proved external engagement, right? So they said, okay, this is great that we're getting less content requests from sellers, but is it actually making an impact in the field? 11,000 external views. So they're able to collate all of that and share that information with the sales team and say, guess what? The content we've produced actually getting viewed by buyers. They're seeing value in it. So go ahead and continue to use it and sort of drove increased adoption for their teams as well. So just again, an anecdote, an example of how digital rooms can help you lift engagement by buyers, but also solve some of the fundamental problems of adoption and just findability, right? So it's a great example that we love to share. And you'll see here, here's an example of like one of the categories inside their channel was different, different product lines and brochures and sort of like how to use some of these different content items. Okay. So hopefully, this was informative for everybody on the call. We're always willing to kind of continue the conversation, talk more in detail about your specific challenges. Hopefully, we've covered some of them today. But just quick poll, just so that we can follow up with you after the fact. If you're, interested in scheduling consultation to support your content management challenges, just select the right option that fits you. Yes, no, another time, and just want to make sure we follow up in a timely manner. So give that a moment. You should see it pop up momentarily.
Yeah, it should be on your screen now. Like I said before, if you've got multiple screens, it's on one, I promise. Um, We do have a couple questions, but I do want to call out we are going to have a digital room available to you. It's going to have the slides and then some free resources that we're giving you, a couple templates and a couple previous sessions that you might be interested in. A lot of free resources, so check that out. I'm going to go ahead and actually, Dennis, I'm going to add in your LinkedIn here. Because this chat
Sure.
is just the quietest I think I've ever seen. I don't know if it's
It is
because it's
pretty
a
quiet.
Wednesday
It's
or
okay.
what, but
It's all
man,
right.
let's get them to connect with you and maybe they got questions that they just didn't want to ask in semi-public.
Yeah, that's okay.
Uh,
That's understood. Yeah, we got some good engagement in the Q&A. We still have time for Q&A, by the way. So again, if you have questions, you said that there maybe were a couple, let's answer those. And like I said, always happy to continue the conversation and help you guys with, what challenges you might be facing.
yeah, so I just ended that poll question here. So let's see, for teams just getting started, where should they focus first? Organizing content or activating it with sales?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really do think it has to start with organization and just making sure that your content is distilled down to the key ones that you actually need and drive value, right? And you've organized it in a way that aligns with your seller's motions, right? I think that's step one, because you can't do activation if you don't have that, right? Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to scale activation. So again, my advice is work on that one page cheat sheet, awareness, consideration, decision, what's internal, what's external, what's like your core content, right? Understand that first, align it to the buyer journey and really understand some of the sales motions that your teams are going through, right? So document those sales plays and start to map not only by journey stage, but also by sales motion, right? Is it an expansion play? Is it a new business play? Is it a, renewal play? Is it, a buyout play? Maybe you're buying out a competitive contract, whatever it might be, right? So it's important to understand like how do sellers sell, right? How do sellers go to market? And then how can I use that as a way to organize my content better? Then you're going to see better activation, right? Like I said, like use some of those case studies, have your sellers partner with you in launching the content or communicating what content to use. Like we said, like if sellers are up there presenting, you're going to get more adoption because they like to listen to other sellers, right? They don't like listening to marketing typically, right? So if you're partnering, build some of those allies internally with some of your key sellers that have influence, have them test the content, vet the content, believe in the content, have that small win. And then you've got a case study for your content, right? And then you can say, okay, I've proven that this content works. It's organized with how you think, how you go to market, and you're going to get more adoption that way.
Great. I've also added in the links here if you didn't want to pull out your phone to the digital rooms on the left and there's a personalized walkthrough on the right. Just to call out again, in that digital room, there's going to be a couple free resources. One's the virtual selling playbook guide, and the other one is the sales content quick reference guide, so you can kind of build what was shown previously. Um, Let me get to another question here.
Sure.
So I think these are just kind of questions for you as a VP of marketing.
Sure.
What's your advice for marketing teams that feel stuck constantly creating new content instead of fixing what already exists? And I'm going to piggyback this question. I had a couple come in of, we create all this content. Do I just wipe it all clean and start over, or do I fix it as I go? What's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, chances are if you're like stuck in reactive mode, you haven't built a good relationship or an understanding of your sales process, number one, or how sellers sell, right? So it's almost like you got to take a step back and not even think about content creation. It's more like we got to understand the sales motion and how we go to market and building good relationships with the sales team, and involving them in how you create your content catalog, right? And again, number one influence principle that's been really helpful for me in my career is the influence principle of involvement. The more people are involved in co-creating the structure, the strategy, the more bought in they are to sticking to it and advocating for it, right? So if you're off on your own, creating your own taxonomy, creating your own organization structure, like people aren't going to be bought into that and it's not going to align with how they sell, right? So I think step one is take a step back. Don't even think about content. Yeah, think about sales process, sales plays, how you're going to market, and co-create the structure that works for you with your sales leaders, right? And then go through that ruthless prioritization that I talked about, right? So if you really have to distill it down to the core pieces of content, What would those be? Put those in that structural framework, align with your sales team, and try to make it as easy for them to find as possible, right? And that's going to reduce the number of kind of ad hoc or random requests that you get. And hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Let's see. We've got. I have another taxonomy. It's more of a just a comment here.
Sure.
How do you approach building taxonomy um, without over engineering it? But I think you kind of maybe go through that again. I know you
Yeah.
showed
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say
a
like
slide.
again, foolproof way. I try to make it easy for you guys. Grab that prompt, go to ChatGPT, right? Drop that content sort of taxonomy prompt in and give it as much context as your current situation, how it's currently organized, your organization as you can. And I guarantee you it's going to give you some really sound recommendations on how to organize. I would say don't have more than 8 or 9 top level categories. Try to really ruthlessly think about like what are the mutually exclusive and exhaustive categories at the high level. Start there, right? And that's going to get you most of the way there, right? And you can use the framework that we've proposed, which kind of gives you like a starter. But every company is different, every organization is different, so you're going to want to take that and modify it a little bit. But the prompt's going to get you most of the way there.
Joey, yes, the recording is going to be available as soon as we're done here. You'll get an email from me that actually links to that digital room. So if you're in the digital room, it'll have the recording. It's already got the slides and all the free resources we just talked about. Instant, man, just for you.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so one last question.
Yeah.
If you were, I'm just going to phrase this in a little bit of a different way than they put it, but if you were kind of stepping into a new, let's say your role, VP of Marketing,
Mhm.
tomorrow, what's the first thing you assess in a content strategy?
That's a great question. Whenever I've joined a new organization, I always seek to listen and understand, right? I can't recommend something if I don't understand the situation that I'm walking into. So one of the things that I would advise is talk to all the heads of sales, talk to your CRO, talk to the expansion team, talk to the new business team, and just listen, right? Just be a little bit of a sounding board. Don't recommend anything. Don't bring your baggage to the table. Just listen. And then I would say go look at the current structure of how content is organized, right? Is it in multiple places? Is it in one place but it's organized poorly? So almost like you want to do a little bit of a content audit, right? You want to see like where is it? Is it being used? What is being used? And with all that information, now you're going to be able to advise and recommend the path forward. And again, when you're doing this, I would highly recommend you collaborate and approach it with one of your sales stakeholders, right? So treat it like a joint project. It's not a marketing problem. It's a revenue team problem, right? It's like a sales and marketing problem that we're going to tackle together. Because why? The more if you involve people in a problem, you influence them and you're going to have them get bought into the solution because it's theirs too, right? They've created the solution. They have a vested interest in it getting adopted as well. So really tackle it with sales and marketing sort of hand in hand. Don't treat it as like a marketing problem in isolation. It's a revenue team problem that you're going to tackle together, right? So listen, understand, audit, and partner and co-create the solution together. That's going to be your recipe for success.
All right. Well, some great news.